Greetings, citizens, and thanks for tuning in to Nindie Nation. I'm Jeff, and today we've got a bit of a twofer. This video was going to be about the best indie games coming in the first half of August, but then a bunch of you pointed out some pretty big nindies that released since our last video. So today, we're tackling both. So hit that like button and subscribe to support the Nation of Nindie, and let's get started with the 5 neglected nindies that released in July 2024. For years, citizens in the Nation of Nindie have adored the low-poly releases by Diplodocus Games. Not only do they lean heavily into their PlayStation and N64 inspirations, but most of their titles are only a couple bucks, especially those released in partnership with solo developer Siactro, who is best known for the Kiwi 64 and Tori series. On July 19th, they released 3 bite-sized games in a single tantalizing $1 package called Tori's Panic Pack. After playing a bit of this collection while on vacation, I can confidently say it delivers that fast-paced 3D platformer goodness and is easily worth the 99-cent asking price. They're basically the answer to
"What if Sega made a good 3D Sonic game for the PlayStation?"
and are wonderful little additions to any Switch library. I also saw a lot of interest in Exophobia, the boomer shooter meets first-person adventure by Portugal-based solo developer Jose Castanera. It takes place on a crashed human spaceship that's been overrun by God knows what, and mixes the fast-paced boomer shooter gameplay with a large environment to explore that's filled with secrets and upgrades, which should be familiar to fans of Metroid Prime. Granted, that's a pretty high bar for comparison, but the game has received great reviews and there just aren't many other points of comparison when it comes to first-person shooters with traversal and labyrinthine exploration. The game released on July 23rd and is now available on the eShop through PM Studios for $14.99. Pixarelia is a Brazilian team of 7 who have quite the interesting little title on their hands with Mists of Noia, which dropped for $9.99. The gothic fantasy art style immediately reminded me of Eldoran, one of my favorite games of 2023, but the description sounds quite a bit different. You play as one of 5 characters who each have an extensive RPG system, and during the day, you set out to defeat monsters and gather resources with 2D combat that should look pretty familiar. At your base, though, you craft gear, synthesize items, and build defenses with the materials you gather to try and survive the monsters which come out and attack at night. It sounds like a neat combination of genres, and I did quite enjoy their last title, Scarlet Tower, which was a Vampire Survivors clone. So what do you think? Would this be a game worth playing on stream? Another release in July is Abathor, a retro 2D co-op platformer that puts a new spin on the formula established by titles like Golden Axe. It comes highly reviewed on Steam, with playtime ranging from a couple hours to over 15, and review scores definitely skew higher by those who played via local 4-player co-op. The game's development has a pretty cool story too, as a professor from DigiPen helped lead the team at POW Pixel Games throughout Abathor's development. If DigiPen doesn't ring a bell, it's a game development school founded in 1988, which made a name for itself after partnering with Nintendo in the early 90s, which led to ushering in a whole generation of developers behind many of the 90s best games. With a cool backstory, a new take on an old formula, and a discounted price of $13.49 through Jandusoft, and a demo available on the eShop, Abathor is a game I'm really glad we didn't let pass us by. Our final neglected Nindie of July was prominently featured back in February's Nintendo Direct. And for the right audience, Arranger, a role puzzle adventure, was very well received when it released on July 25th. The first release by Furniture and Mattress LLC, the team has a fantastic pedigree, including writing by Nick Sutner, who worked on Celeste and Guacamelee 2, and David Hellman, the artist behind Braid. If there's one aspect with unanimous consent among reviewers, it's that the difficulty, while a little on the easier side, has an excellent curve that consistently makes you feel like a genius. And aren't those kind of puzzle games just the best? Following the story of Gemma, a small-town misfit who sets out to find a place where she fits in, as you can see, its approach to the sliding block puzzle genre is all kinds of unique. Similar in a way to Crypt of the Necrodancer, the world is laid out in a grid, and whenever Gemma moves, so does everything else in her respective horizontal or vertical plane. Instead of attacks, for example, you might find a sword and position it in front of you. Now, whenever you move in the direction of that sword, it attacks whatever gets in its way, with the same applying for keys and doors and so on. There are plenty of accessibility options, so you don't have to worry about getting in over your head, and while it does include RPG systems, they are very light and don't rely on experience or grinding. Really, the game is all about vibes, telling a story, and giving you just the right amount of challenge to frequently reach those coveted aha moments. It packs about 5 hours of story-focused content with added challenges and a 2-player mode, and it's available right now with a 10% discount for $17.99. I'm glad we took a few minutes to check those games out, because while I did expect a Ranger to be good, I totally forgot about a new Tori game coming out, and Abathur immediately piqued my interest. Anything jumping out to you? Let me know down in the comments, and while you do that, I'll go ahead and transition over to the 11 notable Nindies hitting the Nintendo Switch through Friday, August 9th.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The first Nindie you don't want to miss in August kicks off the month by firmly planting itself between being one of the highest rated indies of the year and making you wonder what the you just watched. After overwhelming critical acclaim with their first game, The Good Time Garden, Yorkshire-based Cole Supper brings their brand new follow-up to the Switch, as Thank Goodness You're Here launches with a 15% discount for $16.99. The absolute mountain of glowing reviews claim that it's the kind of game for people who enjoy Untitled Goose Game or West of Loathing, but above all else, love a good old comedy. As a traveling salesperson, something I happen to be very familiar with, this quote, comedy slapformer has you meeting with the mayor of a bizarre northern English town, then one thing leads to another and you're off exploring, meeting the small town residents, and helping them with all kinds of requests and tasks which often boil down to minigames. Just watching the trailer had me cracking up. If you happen to be in the same boat, it launched on August 1st, so it's already waiting for you. The other big one dropping on August 1st is currently sitting comfortably among my top 10 games of 2024, and since my only reservation about Trinity Fusion is how well it'll perform on the Switch, you'll be happy to know that a demo just dropped so you can check it out for yourself, but I think it runs just fine. Similar to last year's Astral Ascent or genre mainstays like Dead Cells, Trinity Fusion is a 2D action platformer with procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! The developer, Angry Mob Games, do two things that I think really set this title apart from its contemporaries, but I do need to be a little vague here in order to not spoil anything. As its name and all of its artwork suggest, Trinity Fusion has 3 protagonists, all of whom are anime cybernetic femme fatales. Set in the distant future, the real world has been overtaken by robot alien monster things called the Ewer, and then there's 3 parallel worlds which are home to humans, cyborgs, and androids, each with their own role to fill in order to keep all the other worlds in balance. You're trying to stop the evil Ewer from destroying this multiverse, and do so by virtually jacking in and ridding each world of its threats from the inside. If you're following along so far, the story is basically an anime take on The Matrix meets The Hunger Games, and I happen to think it's rad. At its core, gameplay is a lot like Dead Cells or Astral Ascent, games which usually don't have a ton of narrative or world building, so that being a focus in Trinity Fusion already helps it stand out. However, I should say if you don't care about story, you can skip most of it outside of the occasional audio log which just plays over regular gameplay. If you do skip the story, some of the early game onboarding might be a little confusing just because of how the multiverse concept is woven throughout, but you'd figure it out, and I'm thinking many of you will probably dig the story anyways. So you've got 3 characters, Naira, Kira, and Altara. They each skew differently into how they rely on short versus long-range attacks, as well as the rest of a robust inventory. One character can double jump and air dash, while another uses a grappling hook, with the third having a remote-controlled drone that can teleport you places. If that sounds like a lot, it is, especially when adding in the slots for energy weapons, buffs, gadgets, and all the other items that can take up one of 6 assignable action buttons. Thankfully though, I did always find the descriptions for abilities and how to use them to be short and easy to understand. But then you get into a run, where you earn XP to level up, are constantly swapping or upgrading your primary weapons, and of course running into the usual shops, treasures, and so on as you'd expect in a game like this. But then just when you think you've got this game figured out, it throws 2 new mechanics at you. As you progress through a level, just like in Dead Cells, you come across upgrades that, for example, upgrade damage dealt, health restored, or maybe add a fire buff. The next one you find could offer a defense upgrade, or poison damage, or increased currency gain. But then at your next upgrade, in Trinity Fusion, you'll start seeing the same new perks, but also the ability to merge your existing perks into something new. So maybe you deal fire damage that gives you a 2-second shield, or perhaps your defense buff triples at the expense of becoming more susceptible to poison. See what I'm getting at here? This mechanic and the idea of fusion in general permeates the rest of your run to an extent that feels like some kind of expansion to Dead Cells' red-green-purple system. And it's really cool. But then they take it even further, because in each biome you explore, you can find a pod that lets your character fuse with one of the other 2 multiverse chicks. And that just takes everything I've described over the last minute or so and expands on it exponentially. Structurally, it's usually pretty Metroid-like, with branching paths in each biome to explore. But then at the end of said biome, you can either select between continuing on to the next area, or jumping into the in-between, which turns the structure into a Hades-like flowchart of arena battles, with upgrades to select from after each fight. When you complete a run or you die, you get to purchase permanent upgrades, and for as robust as the rest of the game is, this part's a little more streamlined, with key upgrades like more health or granting a revive being somewhat linear. Overall, I've spent more than 20 hours playing Trinity Fusion on Steam Deck, where it's hovered between 55 and 60 frames per second, so that made me a bit nervous about the Switch port. Like I said earlier, I did play all the way through the Switch demo, and I found it's definitely a little bit of a step down from the deck, but honestly it seems really well optimized, so if you're good with the demo, I think you'll be fine. So in summary, y'all, Trinity Fusion is awesome. It's got a slick, far-future dystopian theme with a small but likable cast of characters, an interesting yet mostly optional story, a ton of replay value, and a roadmap full of upcoming features. So for each and every one of those reasons, plus many more, Trinity Fusion earns Nindie Nation's highest recommendation. A couple other games dropped on August 1st, including Mars 2120, a sci-fi combat-focused Metroidvania published and developed by Cubite Interactive. Following Sergeant Anna Charlotte as she investigates a rescue signal stemming from the first human colony on Mars, it actually shares a lot of visual design with Trinity Fusion, while leaning more into the Metroid than it does the Vania. It even seems to do a lot of the cool set pieces and cinematic camera movement like we saw in Metroid Dread, though some of those scenes look like they may be a bit intense for the Switch. Nevertheless, I'll be keeping my eye on it, and if reviews pan out well, it just might be worth picking up for $19.99. And then I was surprised to see Operation Tango on the list, because while it is a solid game, you might want to do some more research before picking it up. Why? Well, it's a 2-player, online-only co-op game where you never see your partner on screen and communicate with them over voice chat. While you track down the digital terrorist Cypher, you play as the agent Angel or the hacker Alistair. As an agent, you run around buildings solving physical puzzles and doing in-person detective work, while the hacker does so from a computer terminal. And both versions of the game are really fun, at least as much as I remember playing through it online during the dark days of 2020. Plus, not only does it support cross-platform play, it also includes a friend pass. So for $20, you and your friend can play against each other on your own Switches. The thing is though, the friend pass isn't yet available at launch, and the description just says it'll be available soon, which to me sounds like a potential customer service nightmare, you know? And then you add in an unexplained voice chat service, and I just think that if you're considering this game, which you should because it's really fun for the right puzzle-minded two-player duo, it's probably in your best interest to make sure the voice chat is stable and the friend pass issue is ironed out before diving in. Then we've got Bare Butt Boxing, which is a
multiplayer party game with a gimmick.
And that gimmick is, I guess it's silly physics, but that's kind of the case with all of these now, isn't it? Look, my kids and I play Gang Beasts religiously, and this game looks similar. You just play as weird alien things and hit each other until one of you goes flying into the goal, and, well, you know what? I've actually got a code for this one, so let me go play with my kids real fast. Okay, I'm back. We played it. It's pretty dumb, but I think people who like Gang Beasts will probably have a decent time with it. Then last up on August 1st is Farland's Journey by Spellpie and Desert Water Games, published by Sometimes You for $9.99. If you're in the mood for a 16-bit style platformer, that's what you're getting here, as it follows a little girl with a bubble wand who hops and bops her way through a bunch of levels and works out puzzles by getting different magic abilities. The currency you find can be used to purchase new upgrades and gear, and the soundtrack absolutely bops, so this is one I just might be throwing on my wish list. What do you think? Finally, rounding out the first week of August with a lone release on Friday the 2nd is World of Goo 2. And just like the trailer pokes fun at, after 15 years, it's hard to believe that 2D Boy and Tomorrow Corporation have finally delivered a sequel. The original World of Goo is available on pretty much everything, and pretty much everyone should try it, because the physics-based gameplay of building bridges, ramps, and goo dams is just as satisfying as it is addictive. Back when indie games were just relegated to Xbox Live Arcade and WiiWare, World of Goo was the breakout hit for the Wii and a big part of helping indie games find their time to shine. I mean, they could have just thrown a bunch of new levels in, and I still would have bought this game immediately. But instead, the developers rebuilt the engine, overhauled the visuals, and built all kinds of crazy new contraptions for you to master the physics of. It even looks like it might have some boss fights of some sort. It's the sequel to one of the original indie GOATs, and no matter what device you have, you can at least try out the original. So if you're not already, get familiar with the World of Goo, because I'm willing to bet the World of Goo 2 is worth every penny of its $30 price tag. But if your wish list is feeling full already, strap in because we've got even more great games coming the second week of August, starting with Volgar the Viking 2 on August 6th for $19.99. Volgar the Viking is a 16-bit 2D action platformer, think somewhere between Mega Man, Castlevania, and Ghosts and Goblins, and it brings with it the kind of controller-smashing difficulty that's fair but relentless. If you're not up for that, this game is probably not going to be for you, even with the new checkpoint system and undead difficulty options. But if you are, the first game began life on Kickstarter more than a decade ago, and after Washington-based Crazy Viking Studios received high praise across all platforms, their long-awaited sequel is finally ready for prime time. You can expect the usual for a sequel: better visuals, a new quest, more upgrades and abilities, all while retaining that old-school arcade challenge. And with the original game already providing more than 10 hours of content, it sure seems like you're going to get a lot of game here, especially if you take advantage of the pre-release 20% discount for $15.99. On Thursday, August 8th, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be spending a whopping $60 on brand new Nindies. But before we get to the two names many of you should already be familiar with, let's first take a look at Vividlope, because I'm pretty excited about this one. Feeling like a brand new Sega Dreamcast game with modern visuals, Vividlope by Jacklub is an arcade game centered around the mechanic of walking over tiles to paint them. You need to use the correct color and reach a cover percentage before completing each stage. And if the obstacles and enemies weren't enough to get in your way, gravity shifts under your feet, giving the game this really unique 3D rotation that literally gives the gameplay a whole new dimension. It released on Steam last spring, receiving very positive reviews, and for $9.99, this blend of innovative puzzle gameplay and modernized arcade presentation seemed like a perfect fit for the Switch. But hey, everyone listening, stop what you're doing right now because we have finally arrived. It is finally time to talk about Cat Quest 3. In 2017, I fell in love with the original Cat Quest's mix of simple hack-and-slash action RPG combat and relentless assault of adorable feline antics and top-tier cat puns. In 2019, I absolutely adored the sequel, which expanded the RPG and combat systems significantly, while adding two-player co-op and more than tripling the game's size. I've since replayed Cat Quest twice and completed the 20-hour campaign of the sequel with my daughter in co-op, so to say I was excited when the threequel was announced last summer would be quite an understatement. So what's new this time? Well, after evil cats, then bad doggos, the enemy in Cat Quest 3 are rats. Pirates, to be specific.
See what they did there?
It even takes place in the Caribbean.
Oh my god, I love Cat Quest so much!
Customization of your character is a big focus this time around, with hundreds of options for clothing and style, and the combat system has been tweaked to allow for real-time weapon swapping and attack combos, both of which should help with the previous entries sometimes feeling a bit too button-mashy. Navigating the world is even more open-ended than before, which will make playing for a few minutes or hours on end easier than ever, and with the sea being a major theme this time, you get to sail on a ship that introduces ship combat, though I'm not expecting all too much from that mechanic. And that's okay, because I really love this series and would be happy just to have more of the same, but we're clearly getting more than that already. During the marketing cycle for Cat Quest 2, I got the chance to chat with the Gentle Bros a couple times, and they were some of the kindest developers I've spoken with yet, making it even easier to plop down $20 for the pre-order. On August 8th, my cat club will definitely be sailing the seas to thwart the pirates.
I can't get over that.
But if you're not yet convinced, there's a demo you can try on the eShop right now. So go check it out and give me your best cat pun down in the comments. As we wrap up today's episode, I'm willing to bet many of you consider saving this one the best for last, because yet another sequel to a beloved Nindie makes its way to the Switch when SteamWorld Heist 2 releases by Image & Form and Thunderful for $29.99. If there is one game, one Nindie that I put off playing for years only to realize just how amazing it was as I got sucked in for weeks on end, it's the original SteamWorld Heist. Using the adorable space junk SteamWorld crew you're used to seeing in the other series entries, SteamWorld Heist made a tactical RPG that is played from a 2D perspective, where height, positioning, and the trajectory, and ricochet, of your attacks reigned above all else. The original sits comfortably among my 20 or so favorite indies, as even after I completed the story, I kept replaying missions, grinding out levels, and trying the endgame challenges for weeks after the credits rolled. Similar to Cat Quest, this game also focuses on the sea. Water has become a danger and is now corroding all of the steam bots, so you, Captain Leeway, lead this band of pirates on a quest for answers. A big and welcome change this time around, though, in addition to all of the party and character customization from the first entry, Quest 2 now throws a job system into the mix, opening up a slew of combinations for your party and each individual member. And I love me a good job system. Otherwise, the visuals, soundtrack, tone, and gameplay all seem to be similar, but thoughtfully expanded upon, and that's exactly what I'd want out of a sequel to one of my favorite Nindies. I don't see a demo available for this one, but if you're curious, the original SteamWorld Heist is constantly on sale for just a couple of bucks, so add it to your wishlist and save it for a rainy day. For the rest of us who have already explored this world and loved the first outing, SteamWorld Heist 2 is right around the corner and a great way to wrap up an awesome first half of the month. Y'all, this episode was a pain to put together. I didn't want to cover a whole month, but I didn't want to just cover a week, and then I saw a few Nindies that we missed in July that we just had to cover. Well, and here we are. What do you think? Is Trinity Fusion your next roguelite, or are you considering another adventure in the world of Vikings, cats, Steam, or goo? Let me know down in the comments and come join the discussion on our Nindie Nation Discord. August is just getting started, so we'll be back soon to talk about Castaway, the bite-sized Zelda from the creator of Lunark, the indie remake of the NES-era Shadow of the Ninja, and many more. But as far as today is concerned, my friends, we're all out of time. Thanks so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and sharing Nindie Nation with others. Until next time, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindie Nation episode 210, and remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindie Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.